Hello again, you conquering kings and killer queens. This is the one-winged duelist, the Janjo Mega, back again. So, let me take you back in time to October 2002. You get home from school and your parents surprise you with the hottest new Yu-Gi-Oh game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Eternal Duelist Soul. Prior to this, you had Forbidden Memories and Dark Duel Stories, great games in their own right, but they weren't the same. They had weird mechanics, and it wasn't that pure Duel Monsters experience in video game form you were craving. The release of this Game Boy Advance game was 5 days prior to the TCG receiving the Pharaoh's Servant core set, so in a way, this was a sneak preview. Perhaps even more exciting is the prospect that when you opened that box, you received not one, not two, not four, but 3 promo cards to show off to your friends. Exchange, Graceful Dice, and Scald Dice. None of the cards were meta viable, with the weird exception being a couple of short periods where people did try exchange to counter stuff like Exodia and hand traps. So you pick your first opponent, complete the RPS, and now you are in the duel. The UI is surprisingly solid, with each card colored to signify the card type, and the field having movement to give some life to a trading card game. It's too bad the game didn't include unlockable backgrounds or changing colors, because some variety would be nice after a while. Otherwise, the gameplay is how you expect a Yu-Gi-Oh! Video game to be played. In Japan, this was known as Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 5 Expert 1. The Expert title was added because this was the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Video game to follow the Expert rules, none of that Forbidden Memories shit. That said, you can't do everything like in the physical games, such as activating a trap card during the end phase, like to safely destroy a freshly set spell or trap card. At least you can speed up the gameplay, which is a nice addition, as long as you hold the button down. So you win the duel, and for winning, you get to open one of a selection of packs. The packs are OCG based, such as the Dark Magician pack being Volume 1. The OCG sets go up to Curse of Anubis, which is part of Pharaoh's Servant. Because the game follows the OCG cards and their May 2002 list, you get more than the familiar TCG card pool. In that case, you'll wind up with a variety of unique cards you could only get here for quite some time. Fire Reaper, Cyberstein, and even Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Being able to play cards not yet released was awesome, if not making some people confused if Magician of Black Chaos or Harpy's Feather Duster was out somewhere. This made the game a more unique experience than playing the card game during recess with your friends. And if you're enjoying this video, then consider giving it a like or sharing it out, because YouTube likes any sort of engagement and that'll help push this channel out to more people. Plus, if you're already subbed and want to take that support to the Battle City Finals, then join my Patreon and become part of the greatest Yu-Gi-Oh! Channel on YouTube. Following your pack opening celebration, you're most likely going to want to go in the deck builder to improve your deck. After all, your starting deck is pathetic, consisting of considerably weak monsters. When it comes to deck adjusting, the builder menu is surprisingly competent, with a plethora of filtering options to organize your trunk, deck, and side deck to see what cards to optimally add or what your deck statistics are. Outside of this, there's also a card passcode system to add cards you already own into the game. This is a wild feature to consider at the time, and nowadays you can simply search the needed cards' passcodes up. During my playthrough, I only added 5 or so cards depending on my deck's current condition in relation to the difficulty. But I do own most of the cards anyway, so I didn't feel guilty about using the system to a reasonable degree. You unlock more packs typically by beating a tier of duelists a few times. However, you can also win a special pack by defeating a specific duelist 20 times. I found rather quickly that this grinding is too much. 10 duels would be manageable, but 20? Playing the same opponent so many times becomes stale and repetitive very fast, and usually by that point, your deck is upgraded enough in regards to your pack selection. I understand the game was made for grinding to play on a trip to school or just chilling out at home, but it didn't need to be so heavy on it. I only grinded one time, and honestly that was enough for me as a single player playthrough. It'd be one thing to grind once each tier, although every Duelist, hard pass. The grinding also plays into the game's calendar feature. Every so often, there's a local tournament, a regional tournament, or even a special weekly pack with some extra goodies. It's fine when it happens early on, but later in the game you tend to fight weak opponents and it's just a time waster. The worst proponent of the calendar is that to unlock one of the last tier's duelists, Simon, you have to win a tournament in November. So if you're nowhere near that by the time you get to the last tier, well, more grinding your way. Oh, and you have to beat Simon to unlock another of the final tier duelists too. And this leads to an issue of the game. You have to defeat the available duelists a certain number of times to move on to the next tier. It's a wash, rinse, and repeat affair, which is fine, but at the end of it all is nothing. There's no satisfying ending. You get to the final tier and by default there's only one duelist with the others needed to be unlocked via special conditions. EDS needed one true final boss like Haishin or Atem or something. Ultimately, the calendar feature is novel, yet unneeded. At least when it comes to progression itself, it feels well earned as you slowly drip feed your deck upgrades. What was once a deck struggling to muster cards stronger than a Silver Fang, soon turned into a good stuff power card beast, even if I did pull an unplayable Winged Dragon Raw. Sure, the AI progressively cheats the farther you go, likewise the AI can be abused. They won't attack a face-down monster they know they can't beat over. However, they will always Magic Jammer a spell card. It's a give and take. And the last thing to mention is the music. By Raw, the music is incredible. The music has a nostalgic GBA sound font with rocking tunes that keeps the duels from becoming banal. I wish the game had more options related to the audio, yet I ultimately can't complain. Yu-Gi-Oh! Eternal Duelist Soul was a landmark in the series' video game presence. In many ways, this was the 2002 Yu-Gi-Oh! Experience. It knocked it out of the park with everything it did right to get the gameplay to feel like the real thing without cutting too many corners. Sure, it had its fair share of issues like wonky AI, overindulgence on grinding, and no semblance of an endpoint. Yet, isn't that what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is summed up? For all intents and purposes, EDS is Yu-Gi-Oh! At its purest, for better or worse. This is one Yu-Gi-Oh! Game I find myself going back to now and again, and if you're craving that classic first year of the TCG with some OCG flair sprinkled in, to consider that trip back to the Shadow Realm.